Conflict management. What is a conflict but a word? Con, which means together, and fligere, which means to strike. Latin roots, which together make the word. Conflict essentially refers to differences or disagreements or ill will. There are usually 4 types of issues in any conflict: control over resources, difference in preferences, differences in values, and beliefs. Work environments are frequently characterized by destructive conflicts. Conflicts cause stress and unhappiness and also lower output. In extreme cases, conflicts can even cause strikes or lockouts. Many thinking skills are relevant to both preventing avoidable conflicts and managing unavoidable ones. There are numerous thinking errors that indicate people inadequately own responsibility for their choices. Dependent thinking. Allowing your thinking, feelings, and actions to be controlled by another's behavior. Lack of alternative thinking. Saying that you have no choices rather than identifying what your choices are. Passive thinking. Needing the other person to make the first move before you change your own behavior. Victim mindset. Allowing yourself to wallow in self-pity and other negative emotions rather than acknowledging your strengths and coping abilities. Blaming others. Inaccurate assessment of the cause of the problem, including your own contribution to it. Remaining stuck in the past. Being stuck in past hurts and resentments, rather than trying to relate better to the present and future. Insufficient consequential thinking. Not thinking through the consequences of actions adequately enough for yourself and for others. Competitive thinking. Thinking of you versus me, rather than collaborative thinking and finding solutions which work for you and me. Inability to manage problems. The inability to see differences and difficulties as problems to be managed rather than excuses. Reacting to conflict. People react differently when faced with conflict. Some get defensive. Some shy away. Some become aggressive. You have been told that even like a chain, you are as weak as your weakest link.
This is but half the truth. You are also as strong as your strongest link. To measure you by your smallest deed is to reckon the power of the ocean by the frailty of its foam.
To judge you by your failures is to cast blame upon the seasons for their inconstancy. When you are engaged in a conflict, there are 2 major areas of concern: your personal goals and needs, your relationship with the other person. If the conflict is with someone of higher importance, such as a customer, co-worker, spouse, or even friend, you may choose to negotiate so that you solve the problem, all the while keeping the relationship positive. If a relationship is with someone of lesser importance to you, you may choose to continue meeting your own goals, even if it means that this person may not choose to be your friend. Managing conflict. Different types of personalities manage conflict differently. Withdrawing types find ways to keep away from conflict. They believe it is better to avoid conflict than to face it. Forcing types try to overpower others in order to meet their goals. They do not care if others like them. They only care for what their own needs are. Smoothing types try to keep everyone happy to the point that they give up their own goals and needs. They avoid confrontations as they feel conflicts fracture relationships. Compromising types are people moderately concerned with their goals and relationships. They usually like to seek a compromise in which both sides give up part of their goal. Confronting personalities value their own goals and goals of others. They see conflict as an opportunity to improve a relationship. They manage conflict by first identifying that conflict is a problem and then seeking a solution to satisfy both parties. Steps to resolve a conflict. 1. Identifying that the conflict is a problem to be solved. 2. Use I statements when defining the problems and encourage everyone to do the same. 3. Consider and understand all points of view. 4. Generate possible solutions to the problem at hand. 5. Work out the most practical and workable solutions. 6. Implement the solutions. Take decisions and set deadlines. 7. Evaluate the effectiveness of your solutions. Take feedback from various members of the team. And there's nothing like a wise little fable to help you remember. Mother and the Knife Grinder. Around 40 years ago. In my hometown, it was a common sight to see knife grinders roaming the streets.
Knives to grind? Any knives to grind?
My mother was used to this practice and was equally used to returning her standard response if the chap came knocking at the door. "No, thank you," was mother's standard reply to the knife grinder. "That won't be necessary." My husband does it all. My father at the time had his own butchery business, where among other things they had all the equipment necessary for keeping knives constantly sharp. One day, my mother had noticed the knife grinder and had made a mental note to expect a visit later in the day. Shortly after, the doorbell rang. Feeling somewhat irritated as she was in the middle of cooking, mother went to answer the door. She trotted out the standard line, "No, thank you. My husband does it all." Somewhat perturbed by the look she received at his response, she asked him, "I'm sorry, what was it you said?" The man replied,
I said, "Do you want any manure for your garden?" Moral of the story. This tale shows the potential dangers of making assumptions. Firstly, in thinking we know what people have said or are going to say. And secondly, in thinking that we can judge people's characters or professions by how they appear. Appearances can be deceiving.